It's 9:07, and it's time for the latest edition of What's the Word, the broadcast that brings you the news of our Area 1 community. I'm Army Sergeant Anthony Alcantar, and now here's the host of What's the Word, Mr. Frank Fisher of the USAG, Red Cloud, and Area 1 Public Affairs Office.
Thanks, Sergeant Alcantar. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of What's the Word. Excuse me. Well, have we got an interesting topic for you this morning? Dangerous animals, ferocious animals, known as wild boars, have been showing up on our Area 1 military installations recently, and they pose a threat not only to property, but also to people. The wild boars are also known as wild pigs. Fortunately, there have been no reports of the wild boars attacking anyone on our installations, but the Army in Area 1 is in the process of taking several steps to protect those who live and work on our installations, and also to protect the land, cultural treasures, and facilities of which the Army is always a careful steward. And in the process, by the way, the Army is doing things in a way that will protect the wild boars themselves from needless harm. The U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud and Area 1 is taking these measures in cooperation with Korean authorities. Well, on this edition of What's the Word, we're going to give you specific tips on what to do if you find yourself facing a wild boar. And we'll also outline those steps the garrison is taking to help protect you, the land and facilities on our installations, and the wild boars themselves. But just before we do that, I want to tell you a few facts about wild boars. Wild boars, or wild pigs, have short legs, very long snouts, powerful necks and torsos, and they have a very strong sense of smell, acute hearing, poor eyesight, sharp teeth, and dangerous tusks. Dangerous tusks. They tend to be brownish-black. They live in the forests and hills, and they pretty much stay put during the day, but they're nocturnal, and they do most of their roaming at night. They can be about 3.5 feet long to almost 6 feet long, and they can weigh from about 100 to as much as 600 pounds and more. They can jump up to 5 feet high, and they can run at up to 25 miles per hour. They're omnivores, meaning, of course, that they eat virtually anything. Typically, they eat roots, berries, seeds, insects, fish, animals, including snakes and frogs. And they've been known to attack larger animals, too, including goats here in Korea. And when they did, they absolutely tore the goats to pieces. Well, more and more in Korea in recent years, wild boars have been straying from their usual woodland habitats and into cities and towns, even into Seoul, the nation's capital. They've sometimes chased and attacked people, and they also damage property and vegetation, and they do millions of dollars in damage to crops. Helping us bring you the important and timely word on the wild boar situation in Area 1 are today's guests. Both are with the U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud and Area 1's Directorate of Public Works. They're environmental experts, both of them. They work in the DPW's Environmental Division, and they are Dr. Everett Langford, Ph.D. He's Chief of the Environmental Division, and Ms. Pak E-gyung, also with the Environmental Division, where she's an environmental engineer. Dr. Langford, when did wild boar begin to appear on Area 1 installations?
Well, we've actually had wild boars for quite a length of time, but with the recent urbanization in the area around our camps, what we have found is that there are more and more coming onto our areas. And this year has been the largest problem that we have had in at least the 6 years that I've been here.
And how many cases have there been of soldiers actually encountering the wild boar, and what happened in each of those cases?
We've had several cases of soldiers getting involved with wild boars. Luckily, no one has been hurt. There have been at least 3 reported incidents, one in the Hovey Cut area and another in the Dragon Valley location, that we think that this is the reason that they are currently being seen by particularly people out doing their PT early in the morning.
Interesting. And you told me in an earlier conversation that, in fact, there's been some property damage.
Yes, one of our graves located on Rodriguez Range was seriously damaged by wild boars burrowing into it. We have had to put concertina wire around to protect it.
Uh-huh. Ms. Park, when did this start happening in Korea generally, and why?
In Korea, it started since the mid-1990s. As you know, wild boars live in forested area, all trees and vegetation, because they are losing their habitat to seek their food. There comes to urban areas and downtowns, even in downtowns. And over last 1 month, 6 times in Ujeongbu area encountered wild boars.
Well, thank you. We'll hear much more about this subject in a moment. Here's Sergeant Alcantar with the break.
All right, and we'll be back with more of What's the Word, Mr. Frank Fisher. But first, let's get back into the music with Locked Away. All right, it is 9:17, and we are back with What's the Word Hour. And here's Mr. Frank Fisher.
Thanks, Sergeant Alcantar. Hello again, and today on What's the Word, we're talking about dangers posed by wild boars that have been showing up on our Area 1 installations. Those are wild pigs, and they're dangerous, or can be. We've been talking about this with 2 environmental experts. They're with the Area 1 Environmental Division. And let's now look at the all-important question of what people should do if they encounter a wild boar on post. And we'll also look at what to do if it happens off post. Dr. Langford, if on post a soldier or anyone else encounters a wild boar that seems likely to attack them, what specifically should they do?
Okay, first of all, I want to mention that we have had several encounters with wild boars, but none of them have led to actual attacks. And this is probably most likely what we will see around here, is that the boars are not going to attack unless they feel threatened. However, if they do attack, the best thing to do is to try to run away in a zigzag pattern, because these pigs are not able to change direction very quickly. And if you can find a tree, please try to climb up that tree and get at least 6 or 8 feet off the ground if possible, because these animals can leap into the air, and generally what they do is they take their tusks and they try to jab into the individual. So basically we're asking people, if you do see a wild boar, leave it alone. Do not go near it. Do not aggravate it. Simply turn and walk away while keeping an eye on it. If they do appear that they're going to attack, then run. You can't outrun it for a long distance. They can run faster than you can.
Very, very interesting. If on post someone spots a wild boar in a trap, what should they do in that case?
Okay, this is related to something we'll talk about a little later of some of our actions. We're building some traps, and we're going to put them at strategic locations around the installation. So if a wild boar or any other animal is found in one of our DPW traps, that they are to call to the normal work order desk, which is 730-4131 or 730-4920, and put it in as a normal work order. This goes to the work order desk during normal duty hours. At night or on weekends, it automatically cycles over to the fire department, but someone would always be available to answer. So just notify that an animal has been trapped, and then DPW will take care of it.
And if someone sees, again on post, if someone sees a wild boar not in a trap but actually roaming freely, what should they do in that case?
Once again, we would like to be notified, because we are considering this a natural resource situation, that these are natural wild animals in the area, and we would like to know where they are. One, that we can give more information as to potential locations that they could be attacking from, but also simply for our wildlife studies so that we know where the animals are.
And let's talk about what happens if we encounter a wild boar while off post. Some of our soldiers go hiking, or they might just be out for a walk off post. Ms. Park, if somebody does encounter a wild boar off post, what should they do?
First of all, you need to defend yourself. Do not approach them when you encounter a wild boar, and you look weak and smaller, they're gonna attack you. And especially breeding season, from November to January, they are very brutal and aggressive. You need to keep a safe distance from them.
And it sounds to me as though we're wanting to make sure that we don't appear frightened. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And what's a good way to do that? From the wild boar's point of view, what does a wild boar cause a wild boar to think, okay, this person is not afraid of me? Do we have any suggestions on that?
It's very important you need to keep safety distance and don't approach them. It is the key thing. It is a safety tip.
I remember reading while I was researching this subject that it suggested that people not only stand stock still, but that they stare into the eyes of the wild boar. Is that correct advice?
Yes, you need to stare at them because you want to look stronger than they are.
Yes. And as far if somebody sees a wild boar and is at a safe distance, is there any need to call the Korean authorities?
You need to report it to local fire department by calling 119, and they will dispatch the certified hunter and with the shotgun, and they will take immediate action to protect you. Remember, call 119.
Thank you very much. Here's Sergeant Alcantar with the break.
All right, and I'll be right back with the weather after this. It's 9:32, and we are back with What's the Word Hour. And here's Mr. Frank Fisher.
Thanks, Sergeant Alcantar. We're talking today about dangers posed by wild boars that have been showing up on our Area 1 installations. Dr. Langford, you told me a few days ago that the U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud and Area 1 is in the process of taking several measures to help protect people, property, and the boars themselves on our Area 1 installations. What specifically are those steps?
Well, first of all, Colonel Hafner is very concerned about this because of the potential damage both to property and injuries to people. So first of all, we're doing public notification. The U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud Facebook already has on it information on wild boar safety tips, similar to what we've been talking about here. This program is also a part of that outreach. We're also going to have articles in the Morning Calm. FMWR is developing a flyer, and we're in the process of putting some signage up in those areas in which wild boars have been found and seen on post, and that will be happening, we hope, very soon. On a more technical note, we're going to be putting some additional fencing in and some storm ditch protection as necessary where there's a potential for these coming in on post from off post. The DPW is also building 3 sets of traps that we're going to be locating at strategic locations where boars have been seen. Probably most likely in the Hovey Cut in Dragon Valley and near the 1ABCT headquarters building. So we're also developing a service agreement support with the local Korean government officials that do wild animal control and local fire departments. And we're also going to be setting up a hotline with the local fire departments and Camp Red Cloud. So all of these are activities that we're going to be performing to protect both property and people.
And you mentioned the name of Colonel Hafner. For those who may not know, Colonel Jack Hafner is the commander of U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud in Area 1, also known as the Area 1 Commander. And what's the likely timetable for these things?
We're moving this on a very expedited course. We have already done the Facebook, and we have also set up the hotline. The other activities will be completed within the next week to 2 weeks.
And how would this take us through the steps of the notification and recovery process? How would that work?
Okay, the process that we're envisioning is that if a wild boar threat is called in to DPW, either as an alive or trapped, but particularly if it's an alive one, that they call in to the work order desk at 730-4131. They will notify the Environmental Division. We will then get in touch with the local wildlife control unit and the local Korean Fire Department for assistance. And then the animal, we will attempt to capture it, save it, and protect it. If it's in a trap, what we hope to do is to have them take it off post. Colonel Hafner has made the decision that there will be no killing of these wild boars on the installation for a variety of reasons, but one of which these are a part of the natural resource of Korea, and we do not want any idea that we're out killing animals in Korea. So basically the work order to the Environmental Division, we will then take care of it for notification of Korean authorities.
And I know that the Army is the U.S. military, including the Army here in Korea, is very careful, very conscientious about being good stewards of the land of Korea, the cultural treasures of Korea, and so forth. And you mentioned earlier that the wild boars had actually done some damage to one or more grave sites on post. Tell us a little bit more about what's being done to protect the grave sites.
Okay, what they are doing is they're burrowing, looking for roots and other food, and the graves being above ground are actually easier for them to dig into than the hard surface ground. We have placed concertina wire in those locations in which it's safe to do so, particularly on the ranges. But if anyone currently goes up Casey Boulevard and they look at the graves on the right-hand side opposite the Casey Main DFAC, they will see we have put fencing around those graves, both to beautify and also to protect against animal incursion.
Thank you. We'll be back with more after the break. Here's Sergeant Alcantar.
All right, we're going to get right back into the music with Your Surrender after the Casey update. It's 9:46, and we are back with What's the Word Hour, and here's Mr. Frank Fisher.
Thanks, Sergeant Alcantar. Hello again, and if you're just joining us, we've been talking today about the hazards posed by wild boar on our Area 1 installations and on what the Army is doing to curb those hazards. Let me recap some of the main points that have been talked about so far. There have been 6 off-posts just in the Uijeongbu area within about the past month. There have been 6 incidents involving wild boar. It may have been little more than someone seeing a wild boar in the urban area. We know there was at least, we know that there was at least one episode where a wild boar actually made its way into a convenience store, and it was caught on closed-circuit TV. And we've also heard today that right here on our Area 1 installations, we've had so far 3 incidents reported where soldiers saw wild boar in the area. This is while they were doing morning PT. The advice that we've had from our Environmental Division experts, who are our guests this morning, is that if you do find yourself, well, first of all, do whatever you can to avoid getting close to a wild boar. Stay away from them. If you see them, clear the area as fast as you can. But if they're dangerously close, then if they're looking at you, don't look scared. Don't act scared. Stand still. Stock still. Look them straight in the eye, but don't throw anything at them. Don't provoke them. Just don't look scared, and look for an opportunity to get away from them as quickly as you can. They can jump. They can charge. They have tusks. They can be very ferocious. If you happen to have a tree nearby that you can climb, you want to try to get 6 to 8 feet up, because they can try to jump at you and stab you with their tusks. If you have a chance to run, and this is tricky because they can do 25 miles per hour and more, but if you see your opportunity and think you can get out of there quick, try to run in a zigzag pattern, because that throws them off. By the way, we'll come to an interesting fact that we heard during the break, and I'd like to share it with you if we have time. But before we do, we also heard today that the U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud in Area 1 is in the process of taking some measures to help with the problem, to protect you, to protect property on the installations, and also to protect the wild boars. The Area 1 commander, Colonel Jack Hafner, has given orders that there will be no shooting of the animals, that they will be kept unharmed, and the garrison is working out arrangements with local Korean authorities so that if the boars are seen, the Korean authorities can be notified. If one is caught in a trap, they will come and they'll get the wild boar to where it needs to go. If you do see wild boar on our installations, you're asked to call DPW's work order numbers, and you can find those easily enough. You can call the operator to get them, and we may even have a chance to tell you what they are before we close out today. So there are steps being taken to protect the wild boar and get them off post. Also to protect you by getting out the information, as we've done this morning, on what to do to avoid them and what to do if you encounter them. And if you happen to be off post and you encounter a wild boar, call 119. That's the Korean emergency number. It's the equivalent of 911 in the States. Call there. One of our guests, Ms. Pak Yi-kyung, an environmental engineer, told us during the last break, a very interesting fact about the intelligence of the wild boar. Please, Ms. Pak, share that with our listening audience.
Yes, wild boars are fourth intelligent animal in the world: humans, ape, dolphin, and wild boars. And
humans, apes, dolphins, and ranking fourth in animal intelligence, the wild boar. Well, we have just about 30 seconds. Dr. Langford, is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye to our guests, our audience?
Sure. As a quick wrap-up, they can be very dangerous. About a year ago, an elderly Korean gentleman was actually killed down south by a wild boar. We want you to be concerned about it, but on the other hand, it's not such a great threat if you simply follow the rules that we have just laid out for you. So just be cautious. If you do see one, notify us, and we'll be very happy to take care of it.
Well, my thanks to our guests, Dr. Everett Langford, Chief of the Environmental Division, and Ms. Pak Yi-kyung, also with the Environmental Division of Area 1's Directorate of Public Works. I'm Frank Fisher of the Area 1 Public Affairs Office. I've been your host for What's the Word. Handing back now to my What's the Word broadcast partner, AFNKC DJ Army Sergeant Anthony Alcantar. Here's Sergeant Alcantar.
I'm Army Sergeant Anthony Alcantar, and as Mr. Frank Fisher said, thank you for joining us on this edition of What's the Word. I'll be right back with the weather after